Hello, everybody. Hello. Shana Tova. Shana Tova. Shana Tova. Good, sweet, happy, healthy year to each and all. So, as we do, I do want to start with a special psalm, as we do here now. Every time we have our class together, a psalm dedicated for the full and speedy recovery of Rabbi Steinsaltz. Rabbi Steinsaltz, the author of this book. This is Psalm 45 from the book of Psalms, of course, that speaks of the power of speech. His speech, after suffering a stroke some 2 years ago, has still not returned. We pray that these words really bless his speech and his health altogether. So we started a few weeks ago. We started the chapter called "The Way of Choice: An Answer to Ethics," which is chapter 6. All right. So Rabbi Steinsaltz's last theme in this chapter was this dichotomy that we find in Jewish life, that on the one hand we are asked to soar to the heavens, on the other hand we're asked to land back on earth almost simultaneously, which is impossible, I think, for any machine to do. Planes either soar or land, either take off or land. We're told to do both. Now, what does this mean exactly? On the one hand, we're told to connect to God, to further our connection with God, through praying, through meditating, through questioning also, through exploring and learning. And that's the soaring to the heavens. On the other hand, we're also told that our relationship with God is only complete if we can bring that God back here to earth. The God that we soar towards has to come back here on earth. We have to make this world a divine place. Kabbalistic teachings ask the question of questions of why did God create this world? Why did he have to create this world? Well, was he missing something? Why did he create us and then put us in this world? Why couldn't he leave us? So he wanted a relationship with us. How so? By making us live in this world and then uniting the lowliest of lows with the highest of highs. Now, why did he want that? The Baal Shem Tov says, it's a question of desire. That's what God desired. And on the deepest desires, you can't ask any questions because there is no reason. Why do I love tomatoes? I don't know. I love tomatoes. But that's a much deeper love. You can't ask a question on God's deepest desire like we can ask a question on a human being's deepest desire. And of course, God's deepest desire is so much deeper than human being's deepest desire. But that's what he desired. This kiss, so to speak, between heaven and earth. This complete merge of spirituality and materialism. Yes, right, of course. Yeah, our understanding is finite, so we'll never be able to fully understand, not just what's coming, but also understand. Right. But still, the main idea, again, is this role that a Jew has to play. Now, this is uniquely Jewish, I believe, because many other religions will tell you that the goal is to fly to the heavens and to stay there. I think that's why, we spoke about the Dalai Lama over Rosh Hashanah, but that's why they don't get married. That's why they try and divorce themselves from the world in order to stay there, up there in heaven. In Judaism, it's the opposite. Judaism, you're told that if you really want to find God, you'll find him here on earth, not in heaven. This is where he wishes to reside. Now, you have to bring him there. You have to create that bridge between heaven and earth. But once that bridge is connected, you'll find him on the side of earth, not on the side of heaven. That's where God is. The Ibn Ezra, who was the 13th century sage poet, a Spanish poet, Avram Ibn Ezra, writes that the most important psalm in the book of Psalms is Psalm 139. It's a beautiful psalm. But there it says, Imesak shamayim sham ata. If I fly to the heavens, there you are. Vatzia sheol, and if I go down to the depths of hell, which is what sheol is, hineka, behold, here you are. God is everywhere. That's what King David is trying to say in this verse. But the Hasidic masters put a beautiful spin on it, and they say, no, if Mesak Shamayim, if I go up to the heavens, there you are. God is only there. Sham. Vatzia Sheol, but if I go to the depths of hell, Hineka, here you are. Then God is much more revealed in the depths of hell than he is in the highest of heavens. Highest of heavens is only there. If you really want to find God, you'll find him here in this world, because that's where God desires to reside. Again, we don't ask questions on his desire, but that's where he desires to be. And that's why I think the power that we have here as human beings living on earth to create a dwelling place for God is a power that everyone else in God's creation is tremendously jealous of. We spoke about this many times, but when we say a blessing over food, for example, we don't put on tefillin. When we kiss the mezuzah and fix mezuzahs that are made of parchments of cows, today, back then, it was made of parchment, depending on the side of the world you were from. Iranian Jews use goats. You can use a kosher animal for parchments, they use goats. Some use deer. But whatever, today is cow parchment. When you use something that's very earthly and you turn it into a mitzvah, that is where God is found the most. And that's why the angels, when they see a Jew performing a mitzvah, they tremble. That's what the Zohar says. They tremble. That light that we are creating with this merging of heaven and earth is a light that makes the angels tremble. If we could only cherish the power of a mitzvah, we would do mitzvahs all the time. But we don't see it. Fortunately, we live in a very physical world, so we don't see the souls. We don't see that light. But again, it exists. And that's because that's where God wants to reside, in those depths of hell. That's where, we're one with God. The word mitzvah itself comes from the word tzevet, or tzavta. Tzavta means a team. And that's because, mitzvah is usually translated as good deed. That's the biggest mistranslation that exists, because it does not mean good deed. It means connection. When I do a mitzvah, I'm connected to God. That's what it means. But it doesn't always matter whether you're focused or not. What matters is that you're connected. Whether a child feels, I hug my 1.5-year-old child often, and he doesn't always want to be in my arms. But that's just fine. For me, it's the same whether he wants to be there or he doesn't want to be there. It's the same with God. We do a mitzvah, whether our focus is there or not there. For God, it's the same thing. He hugs us through that mitzvah. And therefore, the light is the same light. The power of connection is the same power. Yes, you still asked. The Torah itself tells us, "Da'et Elokei Avicha," you should know God. In other words, you have to really invest all of your intellectual powers to understand God, to connect to God right here also. But at the end of the day, a mitzvah is a mitzvah, whether your focus is there or not. Speaking of the Yetzer Hara, I'll tell you what the Zohar says. The Zohar, I don't know if I've shared this before, but the Zohar is quoted by the Tanya. The Zohar, the foremost book of Kabbalah, says that we also have to understand that the Yetzer Hara himself doesn't really want to cause us to sin. The evil inclination doesn't want to cause us to sin, because he's in a catch-22 situation. How so? Well, Zohar doesn't use the term catch-22, but he's in a catch-22 situation. How so? So it uses the a parable of a prostitute who was hired by the king to go and tempt his son. The king wanted to see if the son really has that royalty in him, whether he will fall into that temptation or not. Now, the prostitute is in the catch-22 situation. Why? Because if it succeeds, the king will be angry. If the prostitute succeeds in tempting the son, the king will be angry at the son, will be angry also at the prostitute. You failed my son. If it doesn't succeed, the king will also be angry at her. Why? You didn't do your job good enough. So the prostitute really doesn't know what to do, and there's no win-win for her. There's no win situation for her. Same with the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara God created to tempt his children. Tempt us to see if really he can remain loyal to our royalty. Now, the Yetzer Hara, on the one hand, wants to do its job well because it doesn't want to be chastised by God. But on the other hand, it knows that if it does the job too well, then God will also be angry. So Yetzer Hara is in catch-22 also. So he really doesn't want us to sin too. So for the sake of the Yetzer Hara, not for the sake of us, we shouldn't sin. That's right. And that's speaking of that light. So each time we said that we do a mitzvah, there's a connection, there's a light that's created. And of course, the more mitzvahs we do, the greater the light. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe speaks a lot about this. He was a man of tremendous action. Quotes the Talmud. There's a passage in the Talmud, and maybe you can explain it to me because I'm still struggling to understand it. But there's a passage in the Talmud that speaks of the Bet Midrash, the hall of students splitting itself into two one day. Why? Because the Bet Midrash asked the question, what is greater, Talmud Gadol or Maaseh Gadol? Is learning Torah greater than doing good, or is doing good greater than learning Torah? Mitzvah over meditation, put it this way. They split. One group said Talmud Gadol, that learning and meditation is greater. The other one said no, doing good deeds is greater. So they fought about this for 3 days. And after 3 days, they came to a conclusion, to an agreement. What was the agreement? Talmud Gadol shemevi lidei maaseh. And actually, learning is greater. But why is it greater? Because it brings you to do good. So that's how they answered the question. But to me, that just furthers the question, doesn't it? Yeah. So you still didn't answer. Is it the learning that's greater? Or it's greater because it leads to good deed. That means good deed is greater. Well, if they juxtapose like that, absolutely. The question is in general. If you don't see someone, if no one needs your help, should you still go and do good deeds? With people that you're not yet aware that need your help. And by the way, good deeds doesn't. We think of mitzvahs also as kind deeds. That's also a misconception. Mitzvahs can be something very personal. If you put on tefillin, it's something very personal. I didn't involve anyone in me putting on tefillin this morning. But that's a mitzvah. If you lit Shabbat candles, you did a mitzvah. If you went to the mikveh, it's a mitzvah. If you did so many mitzvahs that don't involve others. Right? But I just want to get to this point. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, as is explained in Hasidic thought, will always lead you to that which is more passive. When you have an action versus a passive, learning choice, then you always have to choose the action. The mitzvah is really what counts most. And why? Because the mitzvah is really the time when you are fully connected with God. Hasidic thoughts also speak about this, that if you think about this, if there's a king, let's say we had a palace here. We don't live in Great Britain, so it's hard for us to fathom. But let's say we were in Great Britain, the Queen Elizabeth was right here. Now, seemingly, I have no connection as a British citizen. I have no connection with this Queen, besides the fact that she's the Queen of Great Britain and I'm a citizen of Great Britain. But if the Queen all of a sudden calls me up one day and says, hey, can you get me a cup of water? All of a sudden, this incredible connection is created. And now I feel like the King and me are the same. We're one. We're best buddies. She only asked me for a cup of water. But that request is what created this incredible connection. That's what happens with God. Seemingly, we're nothing. We're but dust and ashes, as Anochi Afar Va'efer, as Abraham says about himself. But all of a sudden, God tells you, hey, do this mitzvah, do that mitzvah. And then a connection is created like no other. That only mitzvahs do. Learning Torah, I can learn about Queen Elizabeth all day long. But still, that doesn't create the same connection as when she calls me and says, bring me a cup of water. And that's why mitzvah is always the choice, the option to choose, which leads to action. We get judged by deeds, you're right. Most of the judgment is on the deeds. And by the way, that's the power of teshuvah. The theme of these days is teshuvah, returning to Hashem and changing the ways that need to be changed. But it's interesting that the bad deeds that we did, if we did teshuvah on these bad deeds, they're not shown to us. We're not judged. God doesn't bring them. They don't exist. The prosecution can't bring them because they don't exist anymore. Why don't they exist anymore? Because teshuvah erased them. But we judge by deeds. But on the other hand, you have a statement like in the Talmud that says, Ashrei mi sheba lekan v'talmudo b'yado. Fortunate is the man who comes to heaven and his Talmud, his learning is in his hand. He's holding his learning with him. So you do have, and it also says that in Garden of Eden, what do? You study. You study Torah. Study Torah, v'ne'enim miziv hashchina, and you derive much pleasure from the rays of the divine presence. That's what it says. It says that the righteous is a beautiful description about what they do in the Garden of Eden. But they learn Torah, lomdin Torah, and the crowns are on their heads. They have crowns. There you realize that you're royal. Yeah, we don't always realize it, but we are. There, in the world of truth, you realize that you're royal, so you have crowns on your head. And they have tremendous pleasure from the rays of the Shekhinah. What's interesting is that no matter the pleasure they may have in the world to come, it does not even begin to match the pleasure that we can have from a mitzvah year. There, they're only deriving pleasure again from Ziv HaShekhinah, which means the rays of the divine presence. Here, you get in touch with the Shekhinah itself. Here you connect the Shekhinah itself. Again, when you do mitzvah, you're one with the Shekhinah. Again, it's the difference between learning about the Queen. So yes, that brings me much pleasure. I mean, the Queen maybe, not so much Prince Harry and Meghan Markle right now, but the Queen might bring me a lot of pleasure, learning about her. But still, it's not the same amount of pleasure that when I get this phone call from the Queen, now I'm connected to her. So we can achieve much more pleasure, really, for our souls here in this world by mitzvahs than in the world to come. But still, there is this idea that we have to bring Talmud also up there. We have to bring our Torah with us. Okay, so let's now begin this idea with Rabbi Steinsaltz's words on page 78, again in these books at least. It is easy to confuse. Does anyone want to read? Anyone? The idea is that really it's supposed to be ever growing. Why? Because the world and life is ever growing. Right now, this moment, every realm of this world is ever changing. This moment right now will never be able to be duplicated, even in the next moment, in the moment that will follow it. Every moment stands alone. It's true with moments. It's true with places. The place we are in right now, although it might seem dry and dead, it's a changing place. Our scientists, they'll tell you exactly what's happening right now in the earth, in the plants, etc. It's forever changing. It's true in places, it's true in moments, it's true in human beings. We are ever evolving. Our bodies are ever evolving, but also our soul is ever evolving. And therefore, there is no right way or one way that is right for a person's behavior or for a person's path, spiritual path in life. We have to take everything into consideration. We have to take our being at this moment. This moment, what may be right for this moment for our being might not be right for the next moment. And what Rabbi Steinsaltz is trying to say, and therefore, like you just read, I think this sentence is beautiful, that if anything is clear, it is that a rigid, unchanging way is wrong. And a person that is really growing in his relationship with Hashem is a person that's always open to this ever-evolving change, that always knows and is completely in tune with the moment that he's in, with the being that he is at the moment, with the place that he's in, and with the general path that he's walking in. That's the ultimate type of person. But to say, well, this is the way, and that's what I'll stick to, is really deafening yourself to God's call. But let's continue a little bit more. You're right. Socrates said, on the other hand, that something that, Socrates was not a Kabbalist, but he still said some clever things. An unexamined life is not worth living. It's true. It's difficult to examine your life. But if you don't, it's not a life worth living. If you really want meaning and purpose and to grow, then you have to examine your life. Yeah. And that's why, throughout history, from Moses was the ultimate teacher, but Moses himself was told by Jethro, create a court of judges, or even a court of teachers that can guide each and every person in his own way. But for hundreds and thousands of years, we've clung to this idea that for us to grow, we need a teacher that fully understands us and can tell us, can look at us from the outside, yet from the inside also, and say, you know what, maybe right now you're evolving in this way, and that's why you should pursue this and not that. It's like Rabbi Steinsaltz once told me about this negative behavior that someone was exhibiting. And Rabbi Steinsaltz says, you can't fight the negative behavior because it's like an almond. It was a brilliant analogy. It's like an almond. An almond has a peel to it. Now, if you try and peel the peel of the almond, you'll peel a little bit of its fruit also. So sometimes you don't want to peel the fruit, you want to keep the fruit. So same here, if you're going to fight this bad behavior, it's a part of him right now. If you fight it, you're going to be peeling a bit of his fruit, of that human being. So, and that's what I was saying. If he was saying no, he's like, you're going to take that passion away from him. You want to keep it. So he says, no, but not now. Which I thought was brilliant. But this is exactly what this is saying. Rabbi Steinsaltz is living his own words here. That's why you need a teacher who can really understand your path, where you're coming from, what your enthusiasm is about, your passion is about, etc., and then guide you in the best of ways. Maybe for someone else it is a good idea. Maybe for someone else it's not a good idea at all. Not now, not later. For him, he had that teacher who knew exactly how he was evolving at that moment. And I think that's what Rabbi Steinsaltz really is saying here. And we need to be that teacher sometimes for others. We each have people who consult with us. And before we jump to yeses and nos, or to this is the way, or I'll take the highway, we should really try and understand the changes inside the person before we offer any verdict. That there are really three stages to simplify the stages of parenting. The first stage is that our kids connect most to the touch we give them, right? We hug them, we kiss them, etc. That's when they're infant. And then up until the age of 10, from the age of 3 to 10 maybe, if we're lucky, then our kids connect most with the words that we deliver to them. Then we can really teach them and educate them with words. But then they stop listening, then they become teenagers, forget about it. And after that also, very often forget about it. So then they'll connect most with the model that we offer them. The model that we offer them. It's not what we say, it's what we are. That's what they'll connect most with. So sometimes, as parents, all we can do really is to model. Let the other people, let the Steinsaltzes of the world speak. But like you said, on the other hand, a teacher is a teacher. I mean, I relate to Rabbi Steinsaltz that there's a beautiful line in the Ethics of Our Fathers that speaks of this idea also what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here. And it says that, I think in the name of Yoshua ben Prachya, one of the Mishnaic sages, says, Aseh lecha rav, you should make for yourself a rabbi, and then he continues, Ukne lecha chaver, and acquire for yourself a friend, Ve'vedan et kol adam lekav zechut, and you should judge every person favorably. Now, what's interesting is the words, the verbs that he uses. Aseh lecha rav, you should make for yourself a rabbi. Don't choose for yourself a rabbi. Make. Why make? Because sometimes your teacher will tell you things that you won't want to hear, or that you won't want to do. I know that with Rabbi Steinsaltz. Many times he told me things I'll never forget. When I was like 16 or 17, we had a Farbrengen. I mean, I can tell you many examples. I don't know why this example is coming to mind, but we had a Hasidic gathering, and we were singing and dancing, and then I came to ask him a question, and Rabbi Steinsaltz said, he's very blunt with me, he said, you're asking me a question, but I can't give you any answer right now. I said to him, why? He said, because your mind is full of bugs and flies and mosquitoes. You're not receptive to any answer. You're not mentally equipped right now to receive any answer. So sometimes you need someone like that. Also, Aseh lecha rav, you have to make for yourself a rabbi, whether you like what he's saying or not. You have to make it. Same, by the way, goes with the rest of the Mishnah. Ukne lecha chaver means acquire for yourself a friend. It takes a lot of investment to have a friend. It takes it's not a like on Facebook that will make you your friends. That's not how friendship works. Friendship is like an investment. It's like purchasing. Go buy for yourself. When you buy something, you take your resources and you invest them, you give them. Same year, friendship. You have to invest your entire self in those friendships. That's what true friendships are about. The rest are not called friendships. That's not chaver. That's maybe Facebook friendships, but it's not real friendships. And same with Ve'dan et kol adam lekav zechut. You should judge every person favorably. Favorably doesn't mean that you judge them not negatively. It actually means favorably. It actually means positively. So if I see someone who is supposed to be at work, right, and he called in sick, and then I see him in the mall, now I could say, oh, maybe he was sick and he got better. That's judging him not negatively, but it's not judging him favorably. Judging him favorably would be me saying, oh, he's in the mall because the mall is what makes him feel better. He had to go to the mall. He is sick. He had to go to the mall. So I see the action as a positive action, not just as a not negative one. At a whole different level. But again, this Yoshua ben Prachya was very blunt, and he's saying about teachers what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here. You have to make for yourself a rabbi, a teacher. Okay, but again, a teacher fully can understand you. All right, let's go to the next paragraph. So it is a pendulum swing. I mean, again, we're ever evolving, right? So we have this pendulum swing that a teacher can see in us. Where are you swinging to today, right? And based on that swing, the teacher is able to tell us, well, it's a good idea, but not now, or something like that. But we swing all the time. Look, the Tanya speaks a lot about this. The author of the Tanya, by the way, Rabbi Steinsaltz, we have a soul study class every Sunday here. It's 7:15 where we study the Tanya with Rabbi Steinsaltz's book and his commentary. But Tanya speaks about this pendulum swing in the form of a Benoni. So there are different types of people. So you have the righteous, completely righteous, and then you have the wicked, and then you have what's in the middle, the Benoni, which may be best translated as the in-betweener. And what the Tanya says in the most revolutionary way is that it's impossible to be righteous if you're not born righteous. You'll never achieve a state where you can rest on your laurels and say, that's it, I'm not perfectly good. There are people that are born righteous and that have that unique soul and they have no inclination whatsoever towards bad, towards evil. They have no fight, there's no struggle there whatsoever. But most people are not like that. So really what we have is a choice between being a Benoni, an in-betweener, or Rasha. A wicked man is someone who's given up, surrendered to his evil inclination. But an in-betweener, and that's the goal of every human being, is someone who feels this pendulum swing. That he's swinging between good and evil all the time. Evil speaks to him all the time. The evil inclination tries to tempt him all the time, sometimes with success, sometimes without. But a teacher is someone who knows how to move you towards the good in spite of the tremendous challenge you may be facing. That's that pendulum swing. And therefore what the Tanya says is that people who try and be righteous, they really are engaging in something that's impossible. And we have to try to be Benonis. Benonis are people who are not wicked because they overcome the evil inclination, even though it's very, very much alive. And what Tanya also says powerfully is that this is a daily struggle that most of us have our whole life. But God celebrates each and every small victory. So if right now I overcame myself, I was angry and I overcame myself and I controlled my anger, that is a huge victory that again creates this light that we were speaking about that makes the angels tremble. That's a mitzvah in and of itself. And with each and every victory, we create more and more light. Now the darkness will never be completely expelled by that light, but it can be somewhat more and more controlled over time, the more we control our evil inclination. That's the Benoni. It feels that pendulum swing all the time. So I think this is really what this is referring to. The Tanya also says that you're either doing good. Right now we're all righteous. Why? Because we're learning Torah. So you're defined by the moment. The middle is really artificial. It depends what you're doing right at that moment. Because up until the author of the Tanya, Rabbi Steinsaltz came, people thought that, if you didn't achieve that level of being a tzaddik, being a righteous, then really you're a failure. And Rabbi Steinsaltz said, excuse me, that's for very few people. Those people who think they are righteous, they're lying. Everyone has an evil inclination. Everyone. Now, the evil inclination expresses itself in different ways, right? For some people, anger is a big issue. For them, others, it's not. So for them, it will be a different type of evil inclination. But the righteous battles are different. They battle from one level of goodness to the other level of goodness. So they have to grow. It's almost, by the way, it's a good point, because it's almost like many people ask that about the times of Mashiach. Mashiach is going to come, hopefully now, today. And then we'll celebrate Yom Kippur right there in the temple. What will be? I mean, part of the excitement of living life is that we can have those victories over evil. But when Mashiach will come, evil will be eradicated. So it will be a very robotic life, if you think about this. Yes and no, because then we'll go from one level of goodness to another level of goodness. So then we'll appreciate this climb or this ladder of goodness. I think as it is, in other worlds, in music. You have a very low level of music. You can name what it is, whether reggae or rap or whatever. And then you have a very high level of music. The more refined you are, the higher you reach those levels of music. I think same here with goodness. You have a very low level of goodness, which could just be a selfish one too. I'm a good person, I don't harm anybody. But that's not the way I want to be. I want to create goodness too. I want to do goodness for the world. So then you can climb to that next level. And then there's higher and higher levels of goodness. And because God is the ultimate goodness, and God is infinite, so too are those levels infinite. I've heard Rabbi Steinsaltz many times say that Mashiach is ready to come. The world is ready. The world has had enough divinity that it's ready to come. But we're not ready. I heard him once say, You know, every end of Passover is celebrated by Hasidic Jews worldwide with what's called a Mashiach meal, Seudat Mashiach. And I used to participate in these meals led by Rabbi Steinsaltz, Katamon, in a neighborhood in Jerusalem. And I remember him saying it not once, not twice, but many times, that he would tell people, what if he would like put people on the spot, in a very Steinsaltz way, in a very blunt way. He would say, hey, what if Mashiach would come to your door right now? And it's, I don't know. Yes, Rabbi Steinsaltz then would very harshly say, you'd probably slam the door in his face. Yeah, it's true. It's a whole new reality that we have to begin to conceptualize and create the shift of consciousness in a way. But part of it, I think, is natural. I mean, we're afraid of death, for example, because it's the unknown. We're afraid of trips sometimes because it's the unknown. We're afraid of Mashiach because it's the unknown. If we would really know what Mashiach really means and what will happen when Mashiach comes, we'll jump all over Mashiach. We'll want him to come. Just a question of knowing more and more. You know, the Lubavitcher Rebbe probably was the most vocal about it. He said Mashiach is already at the footsteps of the door, and the door is already open. What we need to do is welcome him in. His predecessor is Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, said that Mashiach has already polished. He polished all his clothes. His buttons also have been polished. He's already ready. Now it's for us to welcome him. But it's also not our fault so much. Let him just come, and we'll get used to him very quickly. All right. So let's look at our calendars. In 2 weeks from now is the 16th of October. That's Chol HaMoed Sukkot, which works for me. We can study in the CBT Sukkah. Yeah, that works? All right. In any case, Shana Tova Umetuka, good, sweet, happy year, Gmar Chatima Tova. Really, it should be a year of abundance, blessings in every area.